Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Drummer Nation, the show where we talk about all things related to drums and drumming with some of the best in the world. Today is no exception. Let's start with welcoming my co-host and partner in crime, a world-class artist who needs no introduction, so he's not going to get one, Adam Nussbaum. How you been, buddy?
I'm glad to be seen and not viewed.
I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks. We've been in summer mode, I guess.
We've all been running around doing this and that and
Yeah,
tit for tat. So
tit for
there
tat.
we go, and all's well. And for
All right.
you,
For me, me? I'm fine. I've been doing my little steady every Saturday night, and I teach online
nice.
and in person, and I do this Drummer Nation thing. I have a good time with. But enough about me.
Amen.
Let's jump to our esteemed guest. This is a young man who lives in L.A. who's making quite a scene, and his name is Jake Reed. Hello, Jake. How are you, buddy?
Hello, good. How are you?
Good. I'm trying to remember where I met you.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think I met you probably like 20 years ago, over 20 years ago,
It's been a long time.
because I was studying with Jeff Hamilton
Yeah.
at the time, and I think I met you maybe at one of
Probably
his
probably through
shows or
him.
something.
Yeah, probably through him. I know you were in
So yeah,
Cincinnati when I went up for a Von Olin tribute thing or a benefit or something that Jeff was playing with the local band there. And I know you were there
yeah,
because I saw the picture. Tina Raymond was in that group. That was a
yeah.
fun night.
Wow,
Yeah,
that
remember
was a
that?
long
I
time ago.
know.
Yeah,
It's before Von
yeah,
Olin died. So let's talk about a little bit of your history first, and then we'll get into real music and drums. You're from Kansas City,
I am.
but you went to school in Cincinnati. Tell me that.
Yeah. Well, my dad grew up in Cincinnati, and my grandma lived there for almost all of her life. And so when I was like looking at colleges to go to. She's like, there's a really great conservatory here, and I was like, okay, I'll go visit it. And then that's where I met Von Olin,
There's a
and
reason right there to go there.
I was just like, and it was he. I think Jeff kind of tells a similar story, but to me, like hearing him play for the first time was just such a different experience from what I was used to, like coming from Kansas City, and just like the whole like orchestra and band, jazz band background, the way that it gets taught in schools a lot of times, and just like marching band, and like I did drum corps when I was a kid, so I felt like I had a lot of chops together. And then
Mhm.
like hearing Von Olin play was just like this other experience, you
Yeah.
know.
Same thing with me when I
And
finally heard him play live. It's like,
yeah,
oh,
so
that's what Jeff's been talking about.
it totally
That's
just
a
like wrecked.
feel and a vibe.
Yeah, and it totally wrecked me, and I was like, okay, like I gotta learn more about this. So
Mm,
that's and so yeah, I spent 5 years in Cincinnati and studied with him, and I studied with a couple other great drummers there. Art Gore was one of them, who's an
mhm.
amazing drummer, and Mark Wolfley, who's another great drummer there, um, and an amazing vibraphonist and percussionist, Rusty Burge, if you know him.
I don't. Looks like Adam
And
does.
so
You play
and
all
so
the mallets? You play mallets and all that stuff?
I did, yeah. I grew up studying a lot of mallets and
Mhm.
playing a lot of percussion. And actually, it's funny. So one thing I get to do out here in LA, whenever Peter Erskine can't do it, is I get to sub with the LA Phil whenever they need a drum set player.
I
Um,
saw that.
and this past week, I actually got to play triangle on a Ravel piece for the first time, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's happening!" Like I'm in the section, I'm playing triangle, and it's a trip, like doing that
Well, let's back up for a
compared to like
second. You
you
mentored
know
with Peter as
playing.
well, right?
Yeah. I was his teaching assistant at USC for. So after I did my undergrad in Cincinnati, I was there for 5 years and studied with Von Olin and all the other great musicians there. Um, it's something, Jeff used to talk about this a lot. He'd always be like, don't go to a school just for the school. Go there for like the person who teaches drums there, who you want
Right.
to really study with. And, since I don't know how old I was when I first heard Peter on a record, but, he's a legend, and he taught at USC. And I was like, I want to study with Peter Erskine because he does all the stuff that I like to do. Like I like to play jazz. I like big band. Um, and he had played with Steely Dan and like all, like growing up listening to pop music, like I was just always into all sorts of music.
Right.
And so Peter did all that, and he played on movies. I was like, this is the guy on like the Austin Powers soundtrack, which is like a big movie, when I was in high school.
Now,
So
speaking of which, I can't remember what it was. It was some series on Netflix or Prime or something. And I said, that's got to be Peter. And I wrote him because we're pals forever. And I said, is that you? He said, no, it's probably Jake Reed. Because it had his earmarks, and it sounded of that school. But you're
yeah.
getting a lot of great work out there, man. Good for you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Somehow the phone keeps ringing, so I'm down, I'm
Must
ready.
be doing something right, huh?
Yeah. I like to
Well,
like
you
to
know
work.
what they say, the best way to get a gig is have a gig and do a good job.
That's
Yeah,
right.
there you go. Yeah, that's it.
That's it. And
Or we
just
like to
keep
say,
going. Well, congratulations, man.
Yeah.
we like to say, fooled him again.
Yep.
So
It's
you
fun.
were there at USC, and so you were there on the scene. You were with Peter, and did you ever have any inklings to go to New York?
When I graduated from undergrad in Cincinnati, I was like playing a lot there with different guys, and it's like closer to New York, and everyone's like, oh, if you want to play jazz, you got to go to New York. And I love New York. Like I went there and visited a bunch, and I thought like I could move here. Like this would be amazing. And my dad was like really a big proponent of staying in school at that time because it was like 2007. He was actually right. I mean, because of the big like financial crisis that happened then. But I decided I applied to go to Manhattan School and didn't get in, and I also applied to USC the same year and got in. So I was like, well, that's what I'm gonna
There
do.
you go.
There's a
And
decision made, yeah.
your desire to get with Peter brought you out there as well, which is a great thing.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I definitely had that thought or that bug. I mean, I remember going and like I took a lesson with Ari Honig because I was like super into his playing at that time, and that was very eye-opening, and he's amazing. And I just like going to Smalls and like the Vanguard, and just I was like, yeah, this is the shit, man. I want to do this. But then my life took me to LA, and I love being out here. So
That happens. When I was in my early
what happened.
20s, I was deciding to move to New York or LA, and I said, I'm a suburban kid, man. I grew up in the suburbs of New Orleans, Atlanta, Miami, and I feel comfortable in that setting. I had no experience with a Manhattan lifestyle, and
Yeah.
I felt
I'm
comfortable moving to
another
LA.
extreme. I'm another extreme because I was born in New York City, but I was raised 1 hour from Manhattan. So it was always, my grandmother lived there. I was always going into the city. So, it was just like a magnet for me. And, all the people I was listening to on records and CDs, they were pretty much there.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
was just incredible to have that direct contact. And, that has a deep impact on your whole reality. So it was
And I
great.
feel
You were with a
yeah.
special guy like, John Von Olin. This was a special individual, And then you had people that were, connected with him and part of that tradition. Having
Yeah.
Hammer, having, Art Gore was there. I remember when Art was in New York. And then you had Peter. This is great. It's just fantastic how paths go the way they do.
It all seems so
Yeah.
logical and almost predetermined when you look back at it. But
Yeah.
those were
It's really
decisions you made.
Yeah, it's really freaky to think about it in hindsight, but you just do your best at the time, and you just
So you
well,
have
I
a
had
wide.
this teacher
Go
I
ahead.
had this teacher when I was a kid, my childhood teacher who just passed away back in February, Dennis Rogers, he was a great teacher in Kansas City. And he used to say, wherever you are, wherever you are planted, grow. So like just wherever you end up, just get in the community there and grow. So I always think about that. I mean, he had a bunch of other like great sayings like that, but
Mhm.
I
So
think
you
about that. Like, I didn't go to New York. I came out here, and this is what I'm doing. So
absolutely. So you have a lot of styles you cover. I know I've heard you play some big band stuff that's killing. What was that band I was listening to? I asked you about it.
which one?
I don't know. We were in a studio. It was all done in studio, and you were reading, and it was
Oh,
smoking, man. I don't know who it
was
was.
there a vocalist?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I asked you about it, but that's been a few weeks ago. So
I can't remember now.
yeah. So how when you moved to LA, was it Erskine that got you the foot in the door for the whole scene? Because to me, you're like the new generation of young studio cats that are coming up in the wake of the older guys who are now retiring, basically.
Yeah. Peter used to take me to a lot of recording sessions with him. Everything from I remember going to a like Fruit of the Loom jingle with him one time, and it was like him and Chuck Berghofer and I forget who else, but it was just like a jazz waltz. And I remember going to some Pat Williams big band sessions with him.
Mm.
I went to some movie sessions with him. There was one I went to, and again, this is like what you were talking about, where it's like you look back and it's like you can't plan this stuff. But there's a movie called Tower Heist that Christoph Beck did the music to, and it was double drums. It was Peter and JR in the same room playing double drums, and like JR's doing his thing. You know how he's just like, it's like that sound and like that way of playing, and then Peter's like totally just being himself. And but they're playing double drums together, and the takeaway from it, besides just being completely blown away by that, was that day one of the assistants on the recording session was a guy named Will Onspach, and he's an engineer that I still work with all the time. And I just met him. We always think back to that day where we randomly met on this recording session, and to me, he's like the new generation of engineers and producers. So it's like you're saying, it's like it's part of this tradition, and you kind of don't realize that it's happening at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just did it because I was interested in it.
Steve
And
Jobs
now,
used to say you can only connect the dots looking backwards.
Yeah. So
That's
yeah,
true.
but yeah, it's true, very true. But yeah, like thinking back, like definitely what you're saying, like Peter, he was the guy that got me into that way of thinking and that way of playing.
Well, let's talk
He really changed my whole perspective really on playing,
That's what I wanted to
especially
talk
coming from
about.
Von Olin. Yeah.
Right, because I've seen a lot of your stuff about the sound samples and all that. We'll talk about that too. And you go out of your way to say you're not an engineer, but man, you've got some major stuff and some major knowledge. Is that a part of the new scene? I think that most drummers should have that in their back pocket.
I think it's very important. The amount of work that I get where it's like it has to be last minute and you got to be able to record it at home. And this is just, again, it's like talking, speaking of Von Olin, like his whole definition of success was not having to get a day job. And I think about that with what I do. It's like, if I can find a way to play drums and like make money at it, so I don't have to like go get some other job, it's like, yeah, I can learn how to engineer myself. And I know that was like 5 years ago when I was making those videos, and I've learned so much more about engineering, and I still stand by those words, because whenever I do get the chance to work with a really great engineer, I'm just like, what? Like, how are you getting these? Like, it sounds so good. And I know that like, it's kind of like the old joke about like, oh yeah, well, how does it sound now? But so like, I realized that most of the sound does come from me and like the way that I play and like my, sensibilities, my way that I create tones. But
your touch.
Huh?
Your touch.
Totally. It's all your touch. Yeah.
But let me throw in.
But it starts with that, and then you have to understand how to mic things, how to get things in phase.
You have to understand some of the things I've watched listening to you: preamps, compressors, distressors, EQ, expanders, guitar pedals with all kinds of stuff.
It's a rabbit hole.
I know. Multi mics on the room, on the overheads, the snare drum, the kick drum, Apollo interface, Pro Tools. I mean, you're talking about a serious investment. What is the average drummer looking to do that kind of work? How deep do they have to go with that? I mean, you probably got
Well,
$100,000 worth of gear there.
yeah, but again, I'll say what I always say, which is that's something I developed over 15 years.
Hmm.
When I first started, I had a 002 Digi 002 interface with 4 mic inputs,
Right.
and I remember asking Peter like, "Hey, do you have any microphones I can borrow?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, like here's
He's,
four,
he's, he's got plenty.
here's
Yeah.
2." Yeah, he gave me 4 microphones,
Mhm.
and at that time, I had friends who were scoring films, and they were like, "Hey, can you record drums for my movie?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, of course I can." And then I had
Sure.
to like
Right.
figure out how to do it.
It's like
Um,
asking an actor if he can ride a horse. Yeah.
yeah,
Sure.
whatever. What do
Sure.
you need me to
Grew up
do?
on a horse.
How high? You want me to jump? How high?
Right. Right.
Like that kind of thing. But um, yeah, so that's how I started getting into it, and it just turned into like, hey, can you get this sort of sound? Like whatever it happened to be. Like, can you get like I know how to get certain sounds, but maybe and then it turned into like this sounds kind of like a Prince thing. Can you get like a Prince sort? And I'm thinking like, okay, well, first of all, that's like a Linn drum machine. So like,
Yeah.
no, like I don't have a Linn drum, but I can approximate it. Or like then it was like, hey, can you get like sort of like a 70s kind of dead drum sound or something that sounds like Don Henley or whatever. And
so
so
you
I
just
just
learn how to
realized that,
do it.
yeah. And so for me, it's like, I'm not trying to put my personal stamp on it. Like, I know that I can't escape how I play and like just how I sound naturally. But it's like, if I can just get the drums to have a certain character to them, then at least I can get into character,
Mhm.
you know?
For sure. Yeah.
And so
But I
that's
don't
like
think
half the battle.
I don't think guys. I don't think Hal Blaine thought about those things. I think he just
No,
walked in and sat down and played the drums. Whereas
no.
today, you have to have a little more. You got to be pretty deep with this stuff.
I think about that all the time. I mean, I think about all of the drummers, like the studio guys from like the 70s and 80s. And it's like, I feel like part of it, I mean, again, I don't know, I wasn't there, but I feel like part of it was they were working so much, they just had to have a drum sound that would work for basically anything they would play on.
Right.
And so it became like, this is how my drums sound, or like the classic example is like Steve Gadd. It's like he has such a recognizable, unmistakable drum sound on pretty much everything he ever played on. But I remember hearing a podcast with him where they were asking him about that, and he's like, that wasn't necessarily like what I wanted. Like, that was like what the engineers were like wanting. So,
That's a
and
different
I think
And the
about
mindset.
that.
producers.
Yeah,
And the
it's so
producers.
so it's not necessarily something that like he's saying like this is how I want my drums to sound. But it sounded like, yeah, it's like he was trying to work. It's like, oh, you want that drum sound? Okay, I'll do that. Like he's just trying to make a living playing drums.
I
You
was
want
on
to
a
get inside the music of what that music is
yeah,
and try to
totally.
serve it accordingly.
I was on a
And
gig.
also,
Go ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say like technology too. Like you think about Hal Blaine compared to, I don't know, like Jeff Porcaro or something, just the way that the drums were being recorded, like that
Mhm.
also I feel like informed how they would play,
Mhm.
big time, how hard they would hit, or I just feel like, like the Wrecking Crew stuff, it's like you think about everyone in the same room. I remember Peter talking about this with some big band stuff. It's like your drums are bleeding into every other microphone that's in the room. And that generation of drummers, they understood how their sound was going to sound on the other side of the glass. They really knew how, and so they knew how to play, and they knew which drums to play when that wouldn't.
There wasn't any glass.
Well, I just mean in the control room. Yeah,
No, yeah,
like
but yeah,
yeah,
that's the way that everything would work. It
yeah,
blows my mind when you think of the cats in the 50s. They'd put maybe one mic on the drums.
yeah. Or like
It's like,
Alvin Stoller or someone like that, where
yeah,
it's just
you
like,
got to get your own balance. You
mm-hmm,
got to present a sound that's going to work. And the whole artistry now has shifted, along with technology. The things have to work hand in hand.
yeah. So that's where I'm at. Is I've always had a love for all of those different sounds. Like I've always been like, yeah, like I want to figure out how to make my drums sound like every Steely Dan record. Like I think that's cool. Or like, you know, like a Black Keys record or something, or like Nirvana or whatever. I had to do a thing a couple days ago where they were like, yeah, I want this to sound like the Police, you know? And it's like, well, first of all, I don't hit the drum like Stuart Copeland, but I can sort of like get into that character with a few different ideas. Or like today, I have to do a song for someone in Nashville, and it's just like jazz brushes for like a Christmas record. And so it's like I love getting into the just like the feel of like how do I get that sound and sound convincing doing it. You know,
So do you know up front what they're looking for? I mean, you have how many snare drums back here? 30 or something?
Yeah. It's my, well, you can
I saw your little tour with Erskine. You did your whole with JR too. It's like, man, the thing you did with JR is going to be required viewing for my students when he puts you put the metronome on and he starts talking about with it or a little delayed or positioning the beat and you hear him doing it with the click and talking about it. That was terrific, man.
I need to hear that. I need to hear that.
It's incredible how he does that. And it's also amazing.
He was on the show. He was on the show, and he said he was talking about. I asked him about the delayed on the snare drum, like a flam. So it's a little. He said, "Yeah, my snare drum's about 7 milliseconds back." And I thought, man, how does he know that? Is he guessing?
Said the bass drum is right on it, and the snare drum is a little, which gives it that gumbo.
Like I feel like he was talking about Porcaro, that's the kind of where he got that from. And all the stuff most of the stuff Porcaro played on, there was no click, but he just still had that innate feel. So I feel like JR was really the guy that dissected that and figured out how to make it work within more of like a gridded at that time. There was no grid at that time, but just the idea of things being precise on a click track.
Jay, would you say what's the percentage of the work you're doing that does not have a click?
2? I don't know. It's hardly ever. Wow. I will say this. I got to do a record this past week. I had 2 days with Larry Goldings for a record that he was working on, like a children's record. And we didn't use click on like half of the songs, and it felt really great, but it's also like we were doing it with a live band. And so you can create a feel with other musicians that way.
I remember
even if it kind of moves a little bit, it's as long as it feels good.
Yeah, let it move a little bit. JR said, in LA, you live and die by the click.
You do. It's so important. And I remember, do you guys know, now I'm blanking, Tim, the guitar, Jesus.
Guitar or bass?
Tim Pierce, the guitar player.
No, I don't know.
He's a great session guitar player. I hear he has a really huge YouTube channel. And there was one video, I've gotten to play with him a few times, and he's just like the nicest dude. But I remember talking to him about this too. He was saying like in the 80s, it was every drummer could have their feel because you were playing with a live band. And so every drummer would lay the snare back in a slightly different place, and that's how you could tell who it was, is like just their sound and their feel. And he was saying that now that's kind of non-existent because so much music is so gridded and so precise. Like you have to be able to play right with it, like sometimes there's no room to like actually lay things back or make it have a certain feel. It's like it's just more about, especially like sometimes I have to play on movie stuff that's like you're playing with something that's programmed and you just have to like play right with it. Like there's just no wiggle room.
Well,
and even then it's like nobody's human, but it's like
a couple of guys have weighed in on that. Vinny told us, we had Vinny on, and he was saying he was in the booth once and he sees a guy over on the side working. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm fixing all your bass drums." Or, he said, "No, I put them where I wanted to." And then,
He was fixing the snare drum.
right, fixing the snare
Yeah.
drum. He was micromanaging the beat. And Vinny was like, "No, don't do that." And I mentioned it to JR and he said, "Well, on the other hand, they're going to do it after you leave."
They're going to do it anyway. So, I mean, that's the thing is whenever I'm recording stuff for people here and I'm sending it out, I don't fix anything. I mean, if there's something like one little note that's off, maybe I'll adjust that, but it's like, let someone else do that. They have editors for that,
Right,
like
right.
I'm just going to play what feels good to me and actually sounds like a human. I mean, I feel like if you're getting called to play drums, like they want something that sounds like a human, and then they can make it sound perfect later if they want.
It's like pitch correction. If you want to nudge a note
Yeah.
up that somebody misses a little bit, that's one thing. Auto tune on the whole song is something else.
And it's also
It's
just
fascinating. It's just fascinating for me to hear all this because I think maybe 2% of what I've ever done has been with a click.
Right.
Most everything I've done is without a click. And it's just amazing to, understand that there's all these different ways to spin this web to get inside of what's happening.
yeah.
It's fascinating.
Well, you're
But
a
I
jazz
think they-
player, though. You're not looking in sections where it has to be. If it's 31 seconds, you got to do it again. If it's 29
Yeah.
seconds, you got to do it again. It's
I remember a great story Steve Swallow told me one time. He was doing a jingle with Mel Lewis, and it was supposed to be like 59 seconds.
mhm.
And they said, "Mel, it's just can you just bring it up the littlest bit? It was supposed to be, And Swallow said they did the next take, and Mel just knew how to give it a little, and it was right on it.
Wow. Now, I'm not. I don't mean to drop some names. Obama told me I shouldn't do that, but Harvey Mason said the click is my friend. You think of it
Yeah.
that way? It's not something you're up against. It's your friend.
No, definitely not.
True.
I mean, I've just done it so much now.
It's
just
an
like
ally.
it's just a skill. I just think of it like a skill that you have to know how to do. I mean, I played in Bill Holman's band for 10 years. And
I didn't know that. I
was-
used to go here and play all the time. Yeah.
yeah, so I did it. Peter did it for a minute right after Kevin Cantor.
hmm
And
I
then
know
he
Kevin.
he couldn't do it. I mean, Peter's like so busy. So he's like, "Hey, you should call Jake." And then, so I did like one rehearsal and Willis was like, "Hey, you want to play in the band?" So, but doing that for so long, he knew exactly how fast or slow all of his charts were supposed to be. And he would stop the band and be like, it's getting a little fast. Or, he would, even if it was like not that like noticeable, it's like he just knew that he wanted it to, he wanted it to sound like Mel Lewis. Like he just wanted you to play like Mel Lewis, which is impossible to do.
It's a lofty goal. Yeah.
But still he demanded that you have a good feel and a good sense of time.
Mhm.
You
Let's dig-
so
Go
you
ahead,
have
both
to
of you.
center a 17, 18 people up there. You got to be Hector the Protector.
Yeah.
You got to know when to dig in the stirrups. You got to know when to pull back the reins.
And like for the longest time, Carl Saunders was the lead trumpet player in that band when I did it. And for like I don't know, the first couple of years, he was just constantly on me about, like he would be tapping his foot, and I'm like sitting there watching his foot, and because he used to claim he's like it's a blessing and a curse, but I have perfect time,
Oh,
which is hilarious. I mean, he did have amazing time. Rest in peace. But I do remember like one day finally he like looked at me and was like smiling like, now you got it. And so I felt like that was like the confidence I needed. But yeah, click or no click, I just feel like it's two different skills,
mhm.
being
Let's
able to
dig a
play
little
with the
further.
click or
Let's
not.
dig a little further into that because you also you have sound libraries,
hmm
and we could take a look at that on your website. But let me punch that up.
Yeah.
Super Dead Drums Volume 4. That means you've got other ones too.
Yeah.
And let me just hear a little of this. I think we should be able to hear this.
With a little sampler.
Yeah, you guys hear it, right?
Whew.
Oh, these are just all different samples.
Right. I'm just going to spot a few of them.
It's a sample of samples.
Yeah, right. Okay, so let's talk about this. I have a little bit of experience in this with
Yeah.
BFD. John Emmerich used to write for them, and there was a period in there where they were allowing third-party people to develop content and brand it and get a royalty stream from it. So I did one with Stanton Moore, and then Peter and I have been friends forever. And we did one called Virtually Erskine, and I won a Drummy that year. And it's a whole different ball of wax to people who aren't used to that. I mean, this is not sampling, right? It's VSTs, or explain, because I remember watching John do this, and Peter insisted he played all the samples himself. So you're going to take, say, a cymbal. You got the bell, the bow, and the edge, and he would play the bow pianissimo and let it ring forever, and then a little louder, and you might do 40 of those with just the bow. Then you do the same thing with the bell, and you do the same thing with the edge. So you got 100, 150 samples, and then it goes into the software so it opens and closes seamlessly, and it's pretty much indistinguishable from real drums. Am I right on all that stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how the sample side of things works with one-shots. And so, yeah, I have a bunch of those. I don't remember how many it is. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm. And what do they work in?
Well, there's different presets that one of my friends knows how to program. I don't know how to program this stuff. I just know how to play the drums and record it.
Right.
But it works in Logic or Pro Tools. You can use Contact.
Okay. So it doesn't go into a drum engine though, like BFD
Ableton.
or
well, it can't. You can import You could import these third-party samples into like Superior Drummer or pretty
That's
much anything where you can import WAV files. So yeah, you could import it into yours. But my packs have presets that are already ready to go for Ableton, Battery, Logic Drum Sampler, Contact, and so you just pull it up if you already have that VST, if you already have that software, and you can play it on your keyboard.
Right.
And so the way that mine works is I have what are called round robins. So I'll play, usually I do about 4 variations of the same velocity. So it's like I'll sit there, again, like I'll hit the snare like very quietly 4 different times, and it's all, and so the idea is it's not the same exact waveform, because the human ear is really good at kind of like tuning out things that sound exactly the same. You know, so those slight variations in tone or touch, you know, and then I do that for 10 velocities,
right?
And so someone can sit there and play a beat on their keyboard if they want to program it that way. The other side, which is what you just listened to, are all loops,
right?
So I'll play, sometimes it's a 2-bar loop, sometimes it's 4 bars, sometimes I'll do 8 bars.
But they're MIDI too, right? They're MIDI as well. So you can go in. The loops are not MIDI.
The loops
okay,
are,
all right.
The loops are not MIDI, and the reason for that is, most of the time, like the way that producers work now is, and this has happened quite a few times, where they're just scrolling through on their laptop for like a loop that just sparks some sort of idea for a song. And so it's happened more times than I can think of, where they're like, oh yeah, we wrote this song using your loop. So it's like the loop becomes the basis for it. And so a lot of people think like, oh, that's taking work away from drummers or whatever. But the reality is that is how music gets written nowadays. I mean, look at Billie Eilish, Birds of a Feather, which is like a huge hit last year. It's written based on, I don't know if they based it on the loop, but it's Circles, which is another drum sample company. It's one of their loops, and it's like, it's kind of the foundation of that whole song. But what happens sometimes is people will use my loop and then they'll call me and be like, "Hey, I really love this loop that you made, but I just want it to feel like it's tailored more for my song. Like, so can you just replay it live?" So then you end up getting hired to play on the song anyway.
That's
And
nice.
then actually, and then you can go, yeah, like, of course, because real music has an arc to it, something. It's not just the same 2-bar loop over and over again for 4
Right.
minutes
Right.
or 3.5 minutes. So
The touch of
just the
humanity.
Mhm.
exactly. And then all of a sudden they're like, wow, this sounds so much better. And you're like, well, yeah, because there's a real human like playing with your song and
Mhm.
like reacting. And I'm a big vocal guy. Like I'm really tuning into like the emotion of the song,
Lyrics,
like
yeah.
what's going. And for me, like that's the most important thing. So I'm sitting there like reacting to that, almost like playing jazz. It's like I don't really like come up with a part and like stick with it. It's hard for me to think that way when I'm playing.
Right.
But it's like I'm giving myself to the moment, the musical moment, and just trying to react to what's happening on the recording. And the problem with that, there's one small problem, which is they're not listening back to you because you're normally overdubbing nowadays. So they're not going to react to anything you play. So then there's that rub of like, well, you still have to play exactly with a click track and but still find a way to have variation and humanity in it, which is a
So
challenge.
is the best. So you can play acoustic drums, right? You get audio, and that's
Yeah.
difficult to manipulate. You can play all MIDI stuff. You can use MIDI loops, but it's hard to manipulate those. Maybe is the best. There's a difference if you have a real drummer playing electronic drums through VST sounds. Then you've got great audio and maneuverability, and you can change anything you want. And if somebody
Yeah.
asked me for a track, I'd just as soon do it electronically because they have all of that.
Yeah. I think
You
about
don't like
that.
the cymbal sound. I got 300 of them.
Yeah, I've gotten asked to do that too. And I still come back to usually pretty much always the reason I'm getting called is because they want something that sounds human. They want some air in their music.
But what I was getting at is if you're playing it, you're human being playing it, then it's going
Yeah.
through the VSTs for all the sounds because you don't have a room. You don't. I know I saw a video you did on getting big sounds out of little rooms.
Totally. And I totally understand that.
I mean, they've gone into super studios that are worth $1 million, and there's high ceilings, and there's mics everywhere, and it's a whole giant thing. I can't do that here, but I
Right.
can punch those sounds up.
Right. I think at the end of the day, like there's still some sort of sample. This is the way I think anyway. There's still a sample that's being triggered
Mm-hmm.
every time you play that. Even no matter how deep the samples get, it's just
Mhm.
like the thing is though, for instance, like when you hit a ride cymbal, it's almost like a snowflake where it's like every time you play the cymbal, it's slightly different.
Right.
It's no matter what, like there's always going to be a slightly different tone that you can get out of a real instrument, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, if you're playing an electronic instrument, there's a finite amount of sounds you're going to get out of it, even if it's still like
Even if it's shitloads.
very deep.
Yeah.
Even if it's super deeply sampled,
Right.
it's still So I don't know. That's just the way I think about it.
No, that's a good point.
But I have done stuff where I'm recording on an electronic kit, and they just want it all MIDI, and then they can change what you play really easily.
That's what I was getting at. So they
yeah.
have that capability, but they also have a live performance.
Yeah, but I think most of the time, and actually, something I've noticed probably in the past couple of years, maybe it's like a pandemic thing, and people just really want human feel to stuff. Like people don't want it to be like I've gotten called for so many things where they're like, yeah, this just sounds too perfect, or they want you to sound like kind of like you don't know what you're doing in a way. Like
Some of the kids have talked about playing drunk. It's a drunk. They say that's a style.
There is the Dilla thing where you're literally like not trying to play in time, how not to lock in.
Right.
But yes, kind of like that, or like
there's a term
or
for
like
that.
play,
what did you say?
Play more.
Dilla?
They call it Oh, Jay Dilla was a producer um in the 90s and I forget like when he passed away. But he produced a lot of really big records and then he influenced a lot of hip hop artists after that. And it kind of became like, I always think of like Chris Dave,
Mhm.
who's an amazing drummer, who's like sort of the human version of that. He's just able to really have that. They call it a drunk. I mean, they call it drunk playing, but I don't think of it.
Wow.
It sounds very precise to me when
Very
you like
precise.
actually break it.
I'm learning so much today, man. I never.
Yeah,
It's
I
like a
never
when
flat
you actually
tire.
break. Yeah,
It's like a flat
Like,
tire
but
on
when you
one
break
wheel
down,
that you want there.
like, yeah, or like Questlove, like when you actually break down what they're doing, you're like, wow, it doesn't sound that drunk to me. It sounds
Right.
very precise, but like
Right.
not
Hey, God.
you know
Precisely wrong.
quantized perfect. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
exactly. It's consistently inconsistent.
Exactly.
So that's definitely a vibe. But
Well, let me ask you about
yeah.
stems now. About you have stem
Mhm.
uh, Logic and all the other DAWs now are starting to do, what do they call it? Stem separating, or you
Mhm.
can take a track that's been
Nice.
pre-recorded, drop it into these the DAW, and then separate the stems, and they're all there, man. And like, so you can go into anything you like. You pick a Steely Dan tune, you separate the stems, you record yourself over it. That's a little weird, man.
It's kind of incredible, and it's like voodoo to me, and I don't know how they do it. I just have no idea. It's like some AI craziness. I know nothing about that stuff, but
Wow.
The,
it is
the
incredible.
intellectual property elements of that are astounding. Like, you know how you can quantize something and then do 10%, 20%, 30. So you can take all the stems and then change them 10% and
Yeah.
put yourself on it. Is that a new recording? I mean, what the hell is that?
I have a friend who does a lot of movie trailers,
Mhm.
and this whatever publishing company he works with, he has a deal with them. They have access to all of like the really huge recordings. So he was telling me one time, like a popular thing to do for a while was you would take like a really classic song, like something Aretha sang on,
Right.
and you would put like huge 808s and like epic orchestra hits, and like so you would kind of redo the song like a remix,
Right.
but like for a movie trailer, so it has to sound epic, like to get people to go see the movie. But then it's like Aretha's actual recording from that whatever huge song hit that they had stemmed out, that they had been able to separate. But the crazy part is he's like, yeah, man, it was like super out because I had to like auto tune Aretha,
Ooh.
It's just like, but that's just part of the vibe that
Yeah.
it's just like, what? Like, I mean, that's part of why she's so amazing. But yeah, I think about that sometimes where it's like the way that things get used and reused nowadays is,
It's a whole new world.
I just think of it, I don't know. I'm only 40, so I wasn't there when this happened, but when drum machines became a thing, and like you had to know how to play with a drum machine, like so many, like the guys who were like doing studio work at that time who learned how to program the drum machines, they were the ones that were like kind of I always think of like Ndugu Chancellor, for instance, they learned, or Jeff Porcaro, they got into it. They were just like, okay, this is part of the thing that we got to know how to do now if we want to keep working.
I was there in the 80s and it started to go that way. The problem was it was growing so fast and so, whatever you bought was very expensive. And a year later, you could throw it away. So you had to be working in those genres to warrant digging into it. And that's when I started studying with Hamilton. Because I was like, fuck it, man, I'm going to play jazz.
I mean, honestly, because I was so, and I still am, I mean, because I dedicated so much of my life to like getting inside of that music, and like playing with so many, like I played with Bruce Foreman for years too, where I would play in his band, and he's also just so heavy, kind of like Hammer, but it's like, to me, like that's the real stuff even now, like is sound. How do you get a sound out of a drum, and how do you get the best sound out of an instrument? Or I remember Von Olin used to talk about that, where he's like, yeah, he told me the story where when he played on Woody Herman's band, guys were giving him shit about his time. And
It's
so
hard to believe, but go ahead.
this is legit what he told me. I mean, he would say, he's like, so at a certain point, he's like, I got so inside of my head that the only thing I started to focus on was, I'm just going to try to get the best sound that I can out of the ride cymbal. And that's all I'm going to focus on. It's like, I'm not going to focus on if I'm rushing or dragging or anything with time. It's like, I'm just going to try to get the best sound. And then he said it turned into getting the same sound. So his whole thing was, if I could just get the same sound out of the ride cymbal on every quarter note, he's like, that was my goal. And that kind of snapped him out of this whole, like, getting inside of his own head about, because you know how it is if you're playing you guys know how it is as a drummer. The minute you start thinking about it, you're dead. You know,
no thinking allowed.
Exactly.
Just pay attention.
You just can't.
It's funny. I went to hear some people play a few weeks ago, and this drummer came up to me afterwards and said, "How do you think it sounds?" So I sound fine. Well, I mean, how did the time? Did it get? What do you know? I said, man, let me give you some advice since you've asked me. Never ask anybody that question. You know, put it where you want it. And be confident with it, and you'll get some feedback and listen to that. But don't go asking the audience how your time is.
Also, if you're that concerned about it, record yourself and then listen to it later.
Yeah.
You know,
Bingo.
which is what I used to do. And you're like, oh, yeah, I got to practice that. Or what, you know, or like, hey, that actually, every once in a while, you're like, hey, that actually sounded pretty good.
A friend of mine said it's never as good or as bad as you think it is.
Well, I think the whole idea is, it's just like Peter used to drill into me, like, play the thing that you'd want to hear next, you know? So the whole idea is what you're hearing while you play is what's actually what it sounds like. That's the goal, is you're trying to get to that level of paying attention.
It's one of Adam's things. I remember Peter saying, play what you would like to hear there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Assuming you've done your homework, you've listened, you know, you're prepared, you would know what to play. Then let the music decide.
Yeah. I don't know. I still think about that. It doesn't matter if I'm playing a gig, or just playing jazz or playing a tune with someone, or if I'm like recording a song. It's like, to me, like, that's the only way that I can conceptualize playing.
How about reading?
I don't know. I have to read music all the time.
It's a big part of the studio scene, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's funny because, yeah, I have to read a lot, but then you also have to have the other side of it together.
Right.
Which is sometimes, like, a lot of pop producers, there's no chart. You know, maybe you have to write out your own chart. But a lot of times I just have to listen down to it and be able to basically play the song. So, and I remember, as a kid, I used to do a lot of reading. I would do like a lot of percussion literature, or like, you know, Will Coxon, or just Ted Reed, or whatever drum book. And so my reading chops got really good compared to what I was hearing, you know, or just being able to like improvise without thinking about it too much. So that was something I really had to work on. I had to develop the other side of it. And actually I have a good story about that with Peter, because Peter's, I feel like he's one of those guys where like he can hear something down like a big band chart once and pretty much have it. And it's like always blown my mind that he can do that. But I remember
Rich
one time,
had that gift.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, Peter might disagree with me and I would argue with him, but I feel like he has that sort of mind where he can just hear something and basically do it. But I remember having a lesson with him one time, and it was like a big band jingle that he had to record drums on earlier that day. And so I got there for my lesson a few hours later, and he's like, hey, I want you to play drums on this. And he recorded it. And classic, like, chart or big band, or like, not, half the hits are missing. Half of the ensemble figures are not even written in. You know, so he's like, so, you know, right, he's like, make any notes you need to after you listen down, and then we'll do it again. And so I did, and I did another take, and it was like slightly better. And then He's like, why don't you just listen one more time? Like make sure you're like really getting everything down that you need to like catch. And I did it the third time, and he just like stopped halfway through, and he's like, hey, he's like, how come you don't have this together yet? This is the third time we've done this. And I'm just like, I was like trying to be cute, and I'm like, well, how come you do have it together after hearing it one time? You know, like,
Yeah,
how
right.
did you? And he just turned around. You know, at that time he still wore glasses, and he would like look right over the brim of his glasses at you, and he would just go, because I pay attention. You know, and I was like, oh. So I just realized like his level of paying attention, or his idea of what it means to pay attention, is just so far advanced from where I was. And so from that day
It's
forward, I was
called
like,
experience, man. It's called
yeah,
the wisdom that comes from experience. And this whole thing about charts and stuff like that. I remember, I played a lot. I was fortunate to work with James Moody, and he would hold up a piece of music at a gig, and he'd say to people, "This isn't music. This is only information." Then he'd point to the band and he'd say, "We make it into music." And
yeah,
you have to figure out how and what. I'll never forget, I was at City College in New York. We were playing Little Pixie by Thad and Mel. So
yeah,
I had the official chart, and at that point, I was studying with Charlie Persip, and I brought the chart into Sip, and we're listening to it, and we're looking at the chart, and he's just shaking his head. He's going, "Listen to Mel. He ain't making none of that, and he's making all of this." And just finding the balance of, when to dot the I's, when to set it up, when to hit it, when not. It was
yeah.
fascinating because, everyone would interpret it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
There's also an
it's
immediacy to it, right? I mean,
it's so
like he
heavy.
said, this is the third time, man. What are you waiting for? There's an
Yeah.
immediacy to that thing where these guys, I have a student who'll say, you can listen to a TV or a movie theme, and say, well, I could have played that, but they just saw it. You look at it once and they say, hey, pay attention. There's a coda here, and you look at the repeated letter B, and okay, tempo change there. Everybody cool? All right, let's run it, right?
Yeah. And honestly, like from that day forward, that's something I spent a lot of time on. And I still think about that. Like it's with Peter, there's like little lessons that it seems like on a daily basis when I'm working, like they pop into my head. But being able to have that skill and something that was something I really had to develop. So it's not something I was born with. And I think that's an important lesson also to young drummers. They think like, oh, you either have it or you don't. And it's like, I don't think that at all. I think a lot of stuff you can develop if you're dedicated to it and you understand what you need to work on, like what your weaknesses are. Because it happens a lot. And I feel like that is a reason that I do still tend to work is like, yeah, I can record at my house, but I'm also fast. I've gotten a lot faster at the turnaround thing, which is important. I mean, especially for like film and TV, you have to be able to work fast and do a good job and have the right sound.
Well, you're doing it,
So
buddy. It sounds like you're doing
that's
it
the
in every level. Are you teaching as well?
I teach a little bit. I don't really have a lot of time right now, but I'm gonna go visit my parents in a couple weeks in Kansas City, and I'm gonna do. It's funny how it's all working out. I mean, again, I could have never planned this, but KU in Lawrence, Kansas, they just started a recording program, and there's a really great drum set teacher there. His name's Brandon Draper, and he's a badass jazz drummer too. But he wants me to do a master class on recording and then also do a drum set master class later.
That's a good
Which
idea.
is going to be awesome. But also in my head, like my drummer brain is like, well, the two go hand in hand so much for me, like, because I could show you where to put microphones and how to set things up and how to get levels. But it's like, if you don't know how to hit a drum and get a good sound out of it, then nothing's going to help you, like, so you have to know, you got to know how to get a good sound first, like by yourself acoustically in a room.
Now, speaking of that, now that everything's online, every drummer, if you're taking lessons, you're teaching lessons, you're putting your music out there, how familiar? I mean, what do you need? You need 4 mics maybe, and it's mostly ears and playing. Is it not? I mean,
Yeah.
like if I'm just teaching here, I just want an acceptable drum sound that the students can hear the instruments and it works without having all that outboard gear and all that stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, can you get away for the kids who are looking at this and they want to get started? Can you get away with a little audio interface and 4 or 5 mics and start with what you have and build it that way? Because I
That's
mean, what you
actually
have is kind of
something.
intimidating. You know, I mean, it's a
Yeah,
lot.
it is. I'll show you
Yeah,
real quick.
got like Neve preamps
I mean,
and
yeah.
yeah.
There's
Now each one of those is a preamp for one channel, right?
yeah, and that again, that's something I've developed over like 15 years or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I actually want to do a video about that at some point, where I get like a little 4-channel interface and just kind of demonstrate like, hey, like 2 overheads, bass drum, snare drum.
That's what I
Here's
got
you can
here,
do with
man.
that.
I'll be the first one to watch that
Yeah.
because that's what I got, and I run it through just a Yamaha little. All I have is some little EQ. That's about it on the board, and I want an acceptable sound that'll work for teaching.
Hmm.
I think there are a lot of people in my boat. Adam's
And
got
I
that.
think
I got
again,
my little Zoom here.
Hmm.
You
And it
know,
works.
it's got
amazing.
2 mics, and I
Right.
can plug 2 in. And then it's yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay. That's what I got to do. That's what I got to
Hmm.
say.
Yep. And
And
I
it
would
works.
also say, like again, if you're talking about like Motown or Stax, like that era of recording,
Sorry.
or Hal Blaine, it's like if you only have 2 microphones, like you should be able to get a good drum sound. And the only difference I would say is if you're trying to get different, like a very modern sounding recording, like you kind of have to get more mics, and that's why I have all the gear that I do, is because I get asked to do so many different things where it's like, yes, you need to be able to close mic the toms because a lot of engineers want that. Like, or yes, even though most like 80% of the time I'm gonna like end up muting the hi-hat mic, like some engineers want that, or like a bottom snare mic. Yeah, it's like, okay, you just got to know, you got to have it, you got to have that. If you're like doing it on a like studio professional level, because my goal at one point was like, I want to be able to compete with the big studios in town. Like
Hmm.
that's my goal. Like if that's where we're going, I mean, just it's like for me, it's like look at the tea leaves, like look where we're going with recording and the music industry. It's like people, especially indie artists, even big record labels, they don't want to spend $3,000 renting East West or whatever for a day, which most of the rooms cost that in town, you
Hmm.
know, and then
Well,
you got to pay the drummer on time.
they're
Then
renting
you
you
got
all
to
the
pay the
gear too.
drummer.
Yeah.
They're renting all the gear. They got to pay for cartage for all the musicians. And it's like, it's just not sustainable with the way that, because no one buys records anymore. So it's like, my thing is I can do that here. And I
Mhm.
have the Ocean Way plugin, and those plugins are getting really good now.
Yeah.
Like the Capitol Chambers and the Ocean Way room emulator. I have a Sound City.
Plugins for people who don't know are effects that are digital instead of you have a box for this and a box for that. This is the compressor. This is this. This is that. It's all plugins, and you can dial them in your DAW. And the DAW of choice is still Pro Tools, right?
Yeah, I know a lot of people in Logic too, but I know a lot of amazing mixing engineers who are selling their analog gear because the plugins are getting so good
Mm-hmm.
that they're just using plugins to mix everything. And honestly, it's a lot cleaner sounding. You don't have to like fix things all the time, like stuff that breaks. Like, oh, I got this like amazing old Fairchild that costs
Mm-hmm.
$40,000 now. I think they're probably even more. I don't actually have one of those. I wish I did. But it's like they cost so much money and then they break, and then you have to have a tech that you can take it to for them to fix it. And it's like, well, UA is making a plugin of that same compressor. It sounds pretty good. Kind of does the same thing.
Well, the thing
You
that's
know,
interesting to me talking to you is that Adam and I are about the same age, and we talk to a lot of drummers about our age, and everybody's kind of either negative or indifferent towards where it's all going compared to where we've been. And
Yeah.
you, at your age and your perspective, I sense you're very positive.
I'm born an optimist, and again, I love to play the drums. What was I saying? I said it was really
You,
important. No.
About
you love to
positive.
play the drums, and that you're being very optimistic within the realities of the times.
Yeah, and I think part of that, again, I wasn't there in the heyday of it. And so I used to joke with my friends, I'm like, "Man, we were born in the wrong decade." And it's like you can sit there and like be upset about that,
Mhm.
but you can also be like, like this is the reality. This is where we're at, and I
Everybody
want to
thinks
keep
that,
doing
right? You see
I
Midnight
want to
in
keep
Paris?
doing this.
Yeah. Remember the Woody Allen movie Midnight in Paris?
Yeah.
He's fantasizing. Wouldn't it have been better if I lived, when the American expats were there, the 20s and stuff. And in the movie, he befriends people who they wanted to live in a time before that.
Yeah.
Everybody
like
wants to live in that previous. I used to think,
Yeah.
man, I wish I was born
Right.
10, 15 years before. And then I stop now and I think, but wait, look when I did grow up, look what I was able to experience. And I just have gratitude for it
Yeah. There you go.
because, you know, I have a great term. I got to pass this one on. My son, Zach, came up with this. He's 33. Said to my wife and I about 10 years ago, he said, Mom, Dad, I'm a digital native. You and Mom, you're digital immigrants because we grew up in an analog world.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but it's what it is now. And we have to try to maintain, I go to the eye doctor to maintain my optimism. That's why you go to the optometrist. So it's
I,
important.
I feel like
Optometrist.
as a as a person born in the 80s, I grew up I think my generation, like I guess I would call myself a xennial, which I still don't identify with being a millennial or a Gen Xer, but I was I mean, I remember when my parents got the internet. And growing up in Missouri, it was like a few years later than everyone else in the country probably got the internet because everything's so behind the times. It's like Mark Twain said, "When the world ends, I want to be in Cincinnati because everything there's 20 years behind the times."
I haven't heard that one. I like
Like,
that.
That's good.
that was another Von Olin that he told me one time. But I think about that. Like I had the first 12, 10 years of my life, something like that, with no internet. So it's like I
Imagine.
just go outside and play, or
Yeah.
practice your drums. I mean, I started playing drums when I was 9, and I didn't have YouTube. And so like I used to listen to this record, Buddy Rich versus Gene Krupa. You know that record?
Sure.
And I didn't know what the heck they were doing. Like I couldn't it's like I just had a CD player, and
Right.
it wasn't on vinyl, but it was like I probably learned how to do half the shit wrong, but at least it was like me listening to it over and over again, trying to figure it out. So I do think that like that's one of the benefits of growing up in an analog world, as opposed to now, where it's like I hate to sound like an old guy, but like the kids these days, like they sit there, they can slow down their videos and
I
see
know what
like
you
the
mean.
exact sticking that like Philly Joe's doing on whatever thing,
Yep.
and it's just
And somebody's already written it down and published it and
so
dissected
you
it.
don't
And
I think of it like it's sort of like Google Maps. It's like you don't have to know how to get anywhere anymore. You just
Right.
plug in the where you want to go, and it tells you. And so there's no need to like retain that information. But
Right.
it's like if you're trying to play drums as your job and as like what you do and who you are, like your identity, like I feel like you should learn it more than just passively learning.
It's got to
Like
be in there. You know what?
yeah,
You don't want it
it's
to be on. You want it to be in.
exactly yeah. It's got to be internalized. And I remember that
Absolutely.
was like a big thing with like transcribing, where it was like I had a really good teacher. Brad Good? He's a trumpet player. I feel like
I have
have you played with
gigs
him?
coming up. I have gigs
Yeah.
coming up with him and Ernie Watts in October.
Yeah, it's so awesome. He was my freshman improv teacher in Cincinnati, and he used to make us transcribe stuff by ear. Like, don't write anything down. Like, just learn it. by ear, you know, and like, so I did that, and that's how I learned how to like really get inside of like, what are all these guys like, get inside of their sound and their feel and their
Repetition,
vocabulary.
repetition.
So you might
Yeah,
Yeah.
look
and it,
at it, Jake, you might look at it like you have the best of both worlds, man. You grew up with the whole analog
Yes.
thing and listening to real musicians and experiencing that, and you're perfectly happy in the digital domain as well. But
yeah,
you
and
also
so
have a
that's
positive energy about it. Most of the guys our age are like, music business is over, kid. You know, everything we did is gone. The records are, forget about it. The labels are gone. The
It's
studios are
changing.
closed.
It's changing. The template has changed.
Right.
yeah,
But
You
I
at
know,
your age, you're very positive about those changes.
well, I would say the reason why, and I remember, God, I've talked to so many guys in that generation of your generation, and it's like they're all saying like, there's a way, you can find a way to do it. You just
Mm-hmm.
have to find it.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to look different,
Mm-hmm.
you
right.
know, and if you can accept that, um, I don't want to get too like philosophical, but like I've been getting more into like meditation and just like being in the moment and like just
Mm-hmm.
reading about that whole way of being. And for me, it's all about like, you can't live in the past and you can't be anxious about the future. Like, we're just here right now, and you've got to like, you're here. You're in the moment.
We don't have a choice.
Yeah. So like, you can choose to be mad or upset or anxious. Like, you can choose to live your life however you want. Um, but for me, it's like, I've got to be positive. I mean, I got a 4-year-old daughter, you know, so I got mouths to feed.
Mm-hmm.
I got a roof over my head. So I'm ready. I want to work, you know, like
Beautiful. Where do you
I
live?
don't know
Well,
that.
you're in a situation where you could stay at home and work. For
Mm-hmm.
And
me, my reality was getting on the airplanes. You
yeah,
know, I'm an American export. I wasn't involved in that kind of world of like the studio work. I was doing gigs, you know, and my
yeah,
kids, the whole life, they saw me going in and out the door. That for me was the work.
Right.
The
yeah,
gig was I got to play,
yeah,
and that was still and still is the fun part of it, you know.
yeah.
So you're able to find this happy medium. God bless you, man. I wish I was that smart.
Well, I would say some of that was by necessity though, because before the pandemic, I was still doing probably like 50-50 recording and gigs or traveling. And when the pandemic happened and everything shut down, it was just like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing now. And one of my
Embrace
friends
it.
was like, one of my friends was like, you should start a YouTube channel. Like, you'd be great because you have all this knowledge and you know how to do things, and you're here in LA on the scene. And I just thought like, I don't want to do that. Like, that sounds complicated, and I don't know, maybe I'll just practice and then, or whatever, you know, like I'll just spend my time like not doing that. And then I thought, you know, I'm going to do it. And then it just kind of took off, and I didn't expect it to. And then when things sort of opened up back again, you know, I just kept recording, and our daughter was born in 2021, like about almost a year after. And I was like, man, like, I don't want to, like, I remember Peter talking about the amount of, I mean, you know, Peter quite well, the amount of times that he was traveling over to Europe when, you know, when his kids were young. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. And I don't really want to tour. Like, I kind of did that when I was younger, and I just can't stand the thought of like not being home to raise my daughter, you know? And so
You got
that's
it
why I was
all
like,
going on, man.
I'm going to figure it out. I was like, I'm just going to figure this out. You know, like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but this is my goal. And I
What a
think that's probably the lesson in
What
there
a
is
great
like,
attitude. Yeah. You
yeah,
know,
I
John
think that,
Clayton was on recently, and I asked him about there not being many gigs. He said, man, when I was coming up, I told the same thing to Ray Brown, who was his teacher. And he said, look, man, there's never been enough gigs for everybody. Don't worry about that. Just play the effing bass. And it held him in good stead. In other words, you know, we can't change any of that stuff. Just embrace it, accept it, learn,
yeah,
keep growing, move forward in your playing and your technical stuff. And you turn into Jake Reed.
I don't know about that.
Well,
You're doing wonderfully
it's a
well, man,
it's
because
a
you have such
pleasure.
balance. Go ahead, Adam. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's been a pleasure to hear you and to see how you've been able to bring these worlds together and keeping the right attitude. Being open to the realities of the time and understanding the traditions of what it is we do.
Yeah,
That's amen, baby.
I'll leave you
yeah,
with a thought from the movie New York, New York. You remember that old movie? And he said, "What are you looking for?" De Niro was a tenor player. So I want my major chord. So what's that? Well, it's being able to play music I love and being able to live comfortably and being able to share my life with my family, people around me.
yeah.
What else do you need?
I remember the great Art Blakey line. I never saw the Brinks truck following the hearse.
All right, man. Anything else you want to add on, Jake? You've been generous with your time and very informative. I really appreciate that.
Oh, I guess I would just say like I feel really lucky. I feel really grateful, and I'm a big fan of both of you. And I've known you, Mike, for a long time, and I've listened to you, Adam, a ton. And I'm a huge fan of your sound and your vibe,
I'm working
and
at it, bro.
your feel. And I just
Thank
want to
you.
say thank you both for having me on. But I would also just say this is something else I was thinking about recently, which is just like there's this idea of like always trying to get to the next level or like wanting more, like having to do more, having to stay ahead of the curve. And sometimes I just feel like I don't know, it's like a balance, right? Like you can't just go full on, like you can't just be beating yourself up all the time about it. There's this idea of just like wanting what you have, just the gratitude of that. And I feel like that's just something I'm trying to embrace more also. It's just like being comfortable, like wanting what I have. Instead of like, again, like ruminating on like, I wish I was like Jeff Porcaro in the 80s or something, I wish I
You're
was this or I wish I
grooving.
was
You're
that.
grooving. You're grooving in what you're doing, and you're doing it well. And
Yeah,
amen. You
Amen,
know,
I
brother.
think
Amen.
that's what I'm getting at is like just be thankful, be grateful for what you have, but keep trying to get better.
Roy Burns was a Zen guy, and he would say, "Don't just do something; stand there."
Yeah. That's like a
you know,
Formanism. Yeah. Don't just play something, sit there.
In other words,
well, I think there's
follow
that
your heart.
expression that I heard that I think is very true. The higher we got up the mountain, the more there is to see. But we also have to be happy with where we are.
Yeah.
And I was thinking recently. The first tour I did was in 1978 with John Scofield, and Hal Galper was the pianist. And Hal was 17 years older than me. I was the rookie, and then there was John, who was 4 years older. And Galper kicked my ass every night on the bandstand musically. But then he gave me the great gift of talking to me about it. So I had a chance to really get inside. And I'm just thinking of how grateful I am to have had those experiences with people that just had more experience than me. And it helped up my game. And what's been happening now, because I was always the kid, so many of the elders are starting to move on now. And then it's strange to think, like, oh, I guess I'm getting to be that elder. So I'm happy when I get a chance to help some of the young talents because I have to pay forward what I've been grateful to receive. And it's all part of it because this is an oral tradition.
Yeah.
And it just makes me feel like, wow, here I am and yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay. And
Oral,
better to be seen than viewed.
oral, and oral, right? A
That's
U
it.
R A L.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you,
Jake,
gentlemen,
I
so
hope we
much.
can meet up one of these days.
Yeah, I would love to.
Now, you live in
It'll
where
be a
you live in LA? What part of LA you in?
South Pasadena.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So when I come out there, I'm going to hang with you.
Please, I would love
And if
to.
you come through Atlanta, you better give me a call.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jake, for your time. This will be out pretty soon, and we'll put your email, your website stuff in the show notes.
Please do.
All
Thank
right.
you so much for having me, guys.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much. We'll talk soon.
All right. See you
Bye
later.
bye.